balance of protectionist measures within the context of the economic crisis, and which impact do you think this has on the regional agreements of Latin America?
During the economic crisis, we've seen more protectionism than most governments have been prepared to admit. The level of protectionism is less than what we saw in the 1930s. It affects less products, but perhaps the same number of nations. But the range, the scope of trade affected is still below that we saw in the 1930s. That's the good news. The bad news is that the amount of protectionism that we've seen since the first G20 summit continues to increase. Some of it has been reversed, but not enough. So overall, that's my assessment of where protectionism is at. In terms of the impact on regional trade and regional trading agreements, much of the protectionism undertaken by countries affects their regional trading partners, often the very people they've signed free trade agreements with. Most of those free trade agreements, whilst they often signal a commitment to liberalise, don't necessarily involve many provisions which stop protections, and where they are strict, they can be circumvented. So if two countries decide to have zero tariffs on butter, then one country can decide just to raise the quality standards on butter and still have the effect of reducing the imports of butter. So regional trading agreements are important, but they haven't necessarily been a big break on protections, not at least from what I've seen.
And for Latin America, some special impact?
I think in Latin America, what's interesting is how the region is fragmented into different groups. You've got one group of countries which are aligned very much with the sort of market liberalizing model, whether that's the US model or the European model, depends to be seen, but it's probably more aligned with the US. So you've got one group of countries who are in that group. Then you have another group of countries which are big and are engaging in quite a lot of protectionism. And that definitely includes Argentina and increasingly including Brazil. Then you've got a group of smaller countries who are engaged in lots of discrimination against foreign commercial interests, and this is led by Venezuela. And then you've got other countries which are in between sort of the lost generation, the lost crowd, who are not necessarily opening up their borders, but not necessarily closing them either. So I think the region's trade strategies are fragmenting into four groups. Now, the region's never always had the same trade strategy. There's always been some fragmentation, but the differences across countries within Latin America is growing over time, and I think that will become apparent as countries' trade policies are evaluated in the years ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.